There is a huge shortage of homes in the U.S., and there's only one culprit to blame, and I'm going to tell you who it is. By the end of this video, you'll know specifically who to blame and why for soaring home prices and accelerating rental rates. Home affordability is tanking in the U.S., and it's time we lay the blame where it belongs. I continue to send the message that we need more homes, and this video not only continues that trend, but it exposes the underlying reason that prices and rents have moved to unaffordable levels. Until today, 100% of my videos have centered around my interpretation of the data that clearly shows a massive hole in the inventory of homes for sale and rent in most local markets around the country. But today's video is different. Today I'm sharing somebody else's view on this shortage as well as his view on who to blame for this dire state of affairs in housing. I continue to watch videos and read articles that for years have explained why home prices would fall, even as they rose at out-of-control rates. You see, the reason that home prices are so unaffordable today is that we stopped building new homes about 15 years ago. And before you jump to the conclusion that builders are to blame for the shortage, let me quickly take that off the table. It's not the home builders' fault. Nevertheless, the reduced rate of construction has led to an inventory shortage, and the result has been skyrocketing home prices and soaring rental rates. Now, if you're in one of those cities where people are moving away, like what's been reported in California, New York, and Illinois, then you may have a local issue that might yield different results. But overall, the U.S. population is growing, and most of the U.S. faces a severe housing shortage, and we need more homes. Recently, I found an excellent article that puts some things into perspective, and my purpose in this video is to share the reason and the party driving the issues that are making the real estate market very broken today. This is a relatively short video, but I promise it is enlightening and clarifies the real culprit who's destroying your local housing market today. The article was written by Derek Thompson in The Atlantic last year, but it's been updated just a few months ago. I've shared a link to the article below. Mr. Thompson wrote the article to point out that the large institutional investors and investment banks, specifically the largest one, Blackrock, are not scapegoats for our housing problems. Instead, there's another menace that we must confront and change if we are to make housing affordable again. Thompson explains that the Blackrock Saga sounds grotesque. At a time of maximal desperation in the U.S. housing market, giant investment banks such as BlackRock are buying up some of the few houses left on the market, boxing families out of the American dream. They're turning these homes into rental units and are reportedly more likely than ordinary mom-and-pop landlords to aggressively raise the rent and evict people who can't afford it. Americans don't agree about much, but they seem united in believing that this is a despicable state of affairs. Recently, institutional housing investors have drawn criticism from both sides of the political aisle. But Thompson points out that this outrage is misdirected and says that if we have any chance of fixing the completely messed up, unaffordable U.S. housing market, we should direct our ire towards real culprits rather than the boogeymen. Fortunately, he explains who the real culprits are. Now, if you're a longtime subscriber, you know I've been warning about the dire decline in home affordability for several years. And if you're not a subscriber, please click the thumbs up like button and subscribe now so that you get all my new content when it is fresh. If you really want to know what's going on in housing, to see and hear the data explained, to evaluate the facts and ignore the hype porn that is so prevalent online, then subscribe now and I'll keep you in the know. Thompson starts his position by identifying the breakdown of U.S. homes and who owns them. He points out that the U.S. has roughly 140 million housing units, a broad category that includes mansions and regular houses, and townhouses and tiny townhouses, and apartments of all sizes. Of all those 140 million units, about 80 million are standalone single-family homes. Of those 80 million, about 15 million are rental properties, and of those 15 million single-family rentals, institutional investors own about 300,000. Most of the rest are owned by individual landlords. Think about what this means. 300,000 out of roughly 140 million homes are institutionally owned. It's about 1/5 of 1% of all homes. Seriously, that's it. I'm getting comments on my channel telling me the market will get swamped when these institutional investors all shed inventory. Yet these commenters don't realize that all the institutional investors together don't hold enough to even bring the number of homes for sale back into balance. Of that 300,000, the real estate rental company Invitation Homes, in which Blackrock is an investor, owns about 80,000 units. So the largest holder of homes in the U.S. is just not significant at this time. Megacorps such as Blackrock are not the ones to blame for current conditions in housing. They're not removing a large share from the market from individual ownership. Rental home companies own less than 1/2 of 1% of all housing, even in states such as Texas, where they were actively buying up foreclosed properties after the Great Recession. Their recent buying has been small compared with the overall market. Besides, BlackRock and investors like it aren't necessarily taking homes away from ordinary families. As the Vox reporter Jerusalem Demsas explains, institutional investors tend to buy homes that need significant repairs. That means they're often competing with other investors, individuals who buy houses to rent them out as a side gig or a main gig, not with typical young couples who are looking to turn a key and walk into a finished house. Meanwhile, institutional investors are more likely than individuals to report making improvements to their rental holdings. Another rumor has these organizations buying properties and having them sit vacant to rot and fall into disrepair. No. This concept of buying and trashing the properties does not pass muster. These investors demand strong rates of return, and you don't get great returns by mismanaging your assets. Sure, there might be a case of poor management in rapidly growing funds, but they're not trying to waste money. I can assure you of that. Most homes purchased by institutional investors appear to be for long-term holdings to take advantage of low inventories and rising rental rates. Make sure you understand what this means. The smart money is buying homes right now because it knows the inventory shortage will help them with their rate of return. It will increase the resale value of the properties owned while also pushing monthly rental rates through the roof. As home affordability hits an all-time low, you might worry government intervention is next. And Thompson urges us to avoid following the example of some countries that have moved to block investment funds from buying real estate for fear that banks are squeezing individuals out of the housing market and generally being extremely private equity-ish in an economic sector that's supposed to be about basic needs. Instead, he suggests we should ask ourselves, what exactly would change for middle-class families if we did? Millions of mom-and-pop investors would still be out there buying millions of single-family homes and renting them out to millions of people. So Thompson feels that the overall texture of the U.S. housing market would remain the same. As an aside, I disagree with this assessment. The housing market has been decentralized forever, so centralization of ownership would give large investors the ability to manipulate market rents and demand a larger chunk of their tenants' disposable income. My greatest concern for housing is that, like many other industries, we'll see some big Amazon come in and take it over and dictate terms in the market. Thompson suggests that nothing in the Blackrock Saga is central to America's housing problem, which is, simply stated, where the hell are all the houses? To this, I agree. A ton of people want to own new homes right now, including the largest crop of 30-somethings in American history. But single-family home construction is in a rut, having fallen in the 2010s to its lowest level in 60 years. The pandemic threw a few extra wrenches into home construction that will hopefully resolve themselves in the near future. So let's get to the real issue that Thompson believes has caused the rapid decline in home affordability. The real culprit behind the housing affordability crisis. Thompson explains that far worse than corporations taking a few thousand units off the market for owners are the governments and noisy, NIMBY-ish residents taking millions of units off the market for owners and renters alike. If you have not heard the term NIMBY, NIMBY, it's an acronym for Not in My Backyard, and it describes the phenomenon in which residents of a neighborhood designate any new development, whether shelter, affordable housing, group homes, or change in occupancy or density of existing development, as inappropriate or unwanted for their local area. Again, it's not the investment banks or institutional investors that are the scourge of housing. Rather, it's the NIMBYs taking units out of the market by blocking construction projects in the past few decades. Thompson claims that California alone has an estimated shortage of 3 million housing units. From New York to California, most cities and states have amassed a pitiful record of blocking housing construction and failing to meet rising demand with adequate supply. Many of the people complaining about Blackrock are actually represented by city councils and state governments, or are surrounded by zoning laws and local ordinances that make home construction something between onerous and impossible. Through law and custom, the U.S. has encouraged people to buy and cherish their houses, but by asking Americans to see their homes as precious investment vehicles, these laws activate a scarcity mindset and sow the seeds of NIMBYism. Don't dilute my equity with new construction. Now, I'm not in complete agreement with Thompson on NIMBY motivation, but I 100% agree with his assessment of NIMBYism's impact on the housing supply. I believe Thompson has misunderstood the real rationale behind most NIMBYism. I don't believe NIMBYism relates to scarcity and property values as much as it does the quality of life and hypocrisy. Hey, I've got mine. Let's not make it too crowded here. In my local market in Tallahassee, waves of people show up at hearings to oppose much-needed new housing developments. The oft-used rallying point is that building more homes will result in a short-term loss of mature trees. It's as if these protesters live in homes that were built in a treeless prairie. It's more of a rationale that we've got it good here and we don't want others to overcrowd us. And while that sentiment is understandable, it does trample on the property rights for people that own developable land. And here's the irony. Those same people who attend zoning meetings are the very ones complaining about soaring home prices. They think they can punish a real estate developer and not have it impact home affordability. These protesters don't seem to understand basic economics because the consumer always pays the price, and right now, consumers are being told to pony up for all these higher costs of delivering new houses to the market. Thompson asks, how can we encourage Americans to support more housing construction near where they live? He suggests that maybe the answer is more single-family rentals. As the Bloomberg columnist Connor Sen points out, homeowners tend to look down on nearby construction because more ample housing could drive down the cost of their property. But renters might celebrate nearby construction for the same general principle. Ample housing might hold down their rent. Personally, I think the problem lies in the enforcement of property rights. If somebody owns a piece of property zoned for a certain type of development, then the property owner should not have to spend years attempting to get permission to do so. Conforming developments should be rubber stamped and approved for immediate development. If the government or private citizens are against the development, they have the right to approach the developer and buy the land so it won't be developed. Instead, they are able to slow or stop development for years simply because they live nearby and do not want developers to be able to utilize the rightful enjoyment of the property they own. In fact, it seems today that people who do not own a parcel of land have more rights with what can be done with the land than does the property owner, and that's why the development and construction of homes is such a fiasco today. Let me reiterate that point, because I believe property rights are being ignored, and we're giving the vocal minority the ability to trample property rights. Today, it is a small group of people who do not own a specific parcel of land that collectively have more rights to the property than does its owner. The owner has been paying taxes on that property for the entire duration of ownership with the end goal of converting the investment into cash. Thompson eloquently concludes his thoughts this way. In the arithmetic of online outrage, where big banks are evil and landlords suck, nothing is more villainous than a big bank landlord. But the larger villain in America's housing crunch isn't the faceless Wall Street Goliath overseeing your apartment building or house. It's the forces stopping any new apartment buildings or houses from existing in the first place. It's your neighbors, local laws, and local governments. If we can't see the culprit of America's housing crisis, that's because we're eager to look everywhere except in the mirror. If you want my thoughts on buying now versus waiting for next year, you can view my recent video by clicking on the box on the top left corner of your screen. To see how inflation-adjusted home prices compare with the past, just click on the box below it. Please remember to like this video, check out the links below it, and subscribe to our channel so that you never miss anything.